All right, everyone. Hello. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is John Burness talking to you all from the new eveningisle.com conversation series. And we have a very, very special guest today. We have my very first guitarist after playing guitar probably longer than any other form of arts and doing podcasts for 4 years, and my very first guitar player. So this is going to be really awesome because this is really not an ordinary guitar player in the best sense of the word at all. This is going to be more to connect my two loves, which is poetry and music. So that's what we're here to talk about. So, having done both of those for a long time, playing guitar seriously for about 11 years now and doing poetry for 6 years now. And the majority of my extra musical projects affairs do come from France, especially in the Paris area. But upon my studying of guitar, and especially reflecting on my studying of the guitar over the years, I've noticed that the guitar is sort of a void in the French art culture, even in the avant-garde free jazz performance culture. It sort of took off in all my research only for about a decade, maybe 2 decades in the 60s and 70s, with its involvement in the free improvisation scene with John Cage and with Derek Bailey having some sort of impact on the French avant-garde scene. But like almost like everything else John Cage has touched, ever since he died, a lot of what he touched, including his work on the guitar, didn't really take off again after that. It never really had that academic seriousness to it. But I have here a very extraordinary guitar player named Noël Akchoté coming to us from Brittany in France, who is an absolutely phenomenal avant-garde guitar player, one of the best I've ever come across. And don't just take my word for it. If you would like to see what he has done throughout the years, I cannot recommend his Bandcamp page enough, where he has well over 100 projects paying harmonious guitar homage to a very wide, very eye-opening array of avant-garde composers. Off the bat would be John Cage, Morton Feldman, uh, Xenakis. I already said Feldman and Lamonte Young, and then I think the most extraordinary, which is something hopefully we'll get more into later, a 6 hour harmonic tribute to Carlo Gesualdo, who if anybody who knows him knows, is the most forward-thinking composer of the late Renaissance. So a nearly 6 hour harmonious guitar homage to it. It is for 5 guitars. Forgot that detail. It is truly an astonishing work of guitar repertoire, and I am so happy that we're going to go over all these amazing yet little touched guitar topics with Akshoti. And yeah, thank you very much for joining in. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you, and hello to everybody.
Thank you. All right, so I think there's no possible better question to start, especially with this context. So having so many friends, so many contemporaries from Paris, especially, it almost appears that the sky is the limit of an artistic career and a musical career in France. I can't think of a better place in the world to write poetry, to pursue photography, to write drafts for plays and theater. So it almost seems like, and I'm asking this with all the benevolence, is like, why guitar? What about the guitar do you feel set itself apart from the rest of the art scene in France?
Uh, how to put it? Yeah, one reason I like guitar is guitar doesn't have any orthodoxy. It's not a classical instrument. It's a permanent instrument. I like the idea also that every second we talk now, we speak, there's gonna be 100 kids buying a guitar for 29 years and try things out. And this somehow is a big chance. I think if you look at the history of the guitar, it was never a classical thing. Classical guitar is something that doesn't really exist because it comes from lute, and then you have all this American story with the early blues, the finger pickers, which are also related to this early history. So guitar is always it's like a blank page. You have to write. You can use it as a tool, as a pen, maybe like for writing. I think it's a big chance. If you play violin, you can't do this. If you use certain kind of forms, you cannot do this because there's a heavy history. With guitar, everything you do right now is more important.
So so the guitar has an amazing modern sort of connotation to it that maybe the rest of the classic arts don't.
It is the guitar, like the guitar is the direct medium. It's just a tool. It's just like a pen, but it's a very special pen because it's at one time very popular. It's an instrument you use for songs, but it's also an instrument you use uh, to play much more complex music. There's a very interesting story. In France, the King Louis XIV is the one who spotted out guitar. Actually, if there is guitar today, it's because of Louis XIV, the Sun King, because he quite liked guitar, and there was a guitar player at the time called Robert de Vizé. It's part of the classical repertoire, and he liked it, so he commissioned him. He said, "I need pieces to go to bed," and this made the instrument somehow a certain value. Before, this instrument was just used. I mean, the whole history from Renaissance of strings instruments are related to monarchy. For example, because it's a very rudimentary instrument, it's a very basic instrument. If you look at the instrument they used in like a baroque guitar, like flute, like whatever, you will find them you will find them in South America, for example. Ukulele is just a version of a much earlier instrument. And all this is going on, and always the usage is the main thing. If you listen to, I don't know, Big Beat Bronzy, or all these finger pickers history, it's the same. They used it because they didn't have a piano. But it's like a long parallel history which has to do with what you really want to say. And avant-garde, classical songwriting, whatever, it's not a problem because this instrument doesn't have any orthodoxy. If you play violin, for example, you have to go through different historical school. With guitar, never.
Mhm.
The whole playing of guitar is guitar.
So, spending a lot of your early life in Paris, um, was it was there an encouraging amount of institutional backup for guitar, especially, the more avant-garde, the free-form guitar, or was it not as much as the rest of the classical arts, the institutional support in France?
In, when I started, institution wasn't really existing. I come from jazz. Jazz was playing. They had a whole circuit of clubs and people drinking and talking to people playing music, and then you had different clubs. There was a famous club in the 13th district of Paris called Le Théâtre du Noir. A lot of music happened there. For example, Massacre from Fred Frist was recorded live there. Uh, Avant-garde, experimental. I mean, you had a big dichotomy because on one side you had the very official thing, which was like Pierre Boulez, IRCAM, all that stuff, and then on the other side you had clubs with free music since always. And also, I think Paris was a place for a lot of American musicians to escape. At some point everybody was in Paris. That's why a BYG label started, because all of them were there. Ornette was there, Cecil Taylor was there, Art Ensemble Chicago was there, etc., etc. And so you always had to go in between these lines.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Jim Morrison died in Paris, right? Or he spent his last day in Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
before he died, he was around. Yeah.
say that one more time.
Actually, the funny thing is the guy who spent, just to tell a small story, but the guy who's maybe he's a bit old today, but for a long time, if you wanted to know exactly what were the last days of Jim Morrison, you had to see Gillier Prémian, a guy who spent the last days with Jim Morrison, who was very close to him, and who is the best friend of Jean-François Pauvros, who is a very important unique free guitar player. People like Lee Ranald and Thurston Moore often would quote him. Jean-François Pauvros is the first free rock guitar player. He had a band called Catalog
Hmm.
on Spalax, which is an important label, avant-garde label.
Hmm.
But I just want to tell you that all these things, they were mixed, everything was mixed. You mentioned John Cage. John Cage is very related to France and Paris, for example. And the people you would visit, they might not be just classical people. You would find different connections. All this, it's like a big, a big pot where things are connecting.
Hmm. Like a big artistic symbiosis of some sort. So
I'll
throughout,
tell you an example. Yeah, sorry.
no,
No,
go.
I was very close, and I was very close and worked with Luc Ferrari from Musique Concrète.
I know him.
And Luc, he had all kind of connections that were much, much more wider than Musique Concrète scene, for example. And this always happened. Like Ornette Coleman, he was very close to people you wouldn't expect. François Rabat, which is an amazing double bass player since the 60s, was like a virtuoso classical guy, but also made chansons. And I just want to mean that all these things they were mixing permanently. But maybe like if you take New York and Lou Reed and Robert Quine and all this story and all these links you had between poets, between writers, between Paris was a good place for that.
Yes, I do know Luc Ferrari. He was very close with Pierre Henry, right? Because Pierre Henry was
Yeah.
he was probably one of my favorite of the Music Concrete people.
And Pierre Schaeffer, they all were students of Pierre Schaeffer is the kind of official guy. If you talk about institution, Pierre Schaeffer was institutional. And this was a special moment because in France, before you had André Malraux, who was the first minister of culture from Charles de Gaulle. And there are people with huge views. Like for theater, for example, they make the TNP. It was like trying to give culture, serious culture to everybody.
Hmm. And throughout your lifetime and throughout your journey on the guitar, because I can only imagine that the institutional support and the cultural support around the guitar in France and in the avant-garde scene has grown since you started guitar. Do you feel that the guitar either has already or if not has potential of affecting the rest of the French arts, like having some sort of influence on, you know, having some sort of influence on the underground cinema or the underground poetry scene in France?
Of course, there's a funny thing is people don't realize this, but if you take film soundtracks, uh, I'm not exaggerating, but 80% of it is guitar solo. But people don't realize this. Most of the series you see, there's just guitar behind. Most of the films you see, it's just guitar behind. Sometimes it's orchestra, but guitar is always all. Guitar is a link to everything. I mean, as a guitar player, I can play with contemporary musicians and go to song singers, go to variety, go to pop music, go to jazz, there is a link. So if the institution is following this, I don't know, but the instrument itself is connecting. The fact that this instrument made you able to play with any kind of people, and this happens, I think our connections to a wider world are really big with the guitar. I see with other instruments it can happen, but it's more restrained.
Mm-hmm. All right. And so so a large part of the appeal to you was also the nature of the instrument in that not only is the nature of the instrument very wide, in that it's one of the only instruments still to this day, even in the advanced age, that can incorporate all three of the branches that Pat Metheny showed me, which was melody, harmony, and rhythm. But it was also the just how all encompassing culturally the guitar is. It has a significant role in almost every modern culture. That's part of
Yeah,
what.
yeah, it does. It totally.
And
Sorry, I didn't hear the last.
um
Yeah,
part of
yeah.
I was pointing out that part of what appealed to you on the guitar was how it encompassed and united pretty much every modern culture that it has a role in it. the universality of the guitar.
It is a very function. Yeah, it is very functional instrument. Again, I mean, this I think it's best picture of it. But every second we talk, so many kids are buying a guitar for 39, 99, 29, whatever. But in the world, people are buying a guitar and trying to play with it, and they don't have the weight of. If if parents would buy a piano, they would have the weight of trying to play piece. No, guitar that just can make bang, bang, bang. Try something, and eventually made a band. I mean, for example, the if you take in US, the Leo Fender is a fantastic guy, but he wasn't part of the tradition of luthier. He was like a crafter. He was an engineer, somebody who's trying to make a model of something and rationalize how you do it, and this somehow let's totally open for musicians or sound designer or whoever wants to try the guitar. It let this instrument a wide open door to any experiment, whatever, whether it's rock in itself, like a feedback and whatever, like a loud guitars is an experiment in itself. The story, for example, like so Leo Fender was only listening to country. He wasn't interested in music. He was like trying to craft this instrument, and for this he was very clever. He was asking musicians. He said, okay, I have this model, can you come try, tell me what's wrong? And there's this famous story that Dick Dale, the surf Dick Dale, that's how he invented loud. Because before, if you take Chuck Berry, people play with amps that were 15, 30 watts. Dick Dale, he came, he said, it's not loud enough. So Leo Fender made a 50 watts. It wasn't loud enough. He said, I want more, and etc. And they went to 120, the dual bassman. And that's how it worked. And guitar allows you this. I don't know any other instrument that will allow you this.
Mm-hmm. And
It's the nature. It's not pure.
mhm. And the next section starts the whole. So what really struck me, what kind of left me in awe at your work on the guitar when I was listening to a bunch of your stuff on in preparation for this, I was when I hear when I hear about your story as a French avant-garde guitar player, I was almost certainly expecting some sort of atonal, some sort of Derek Bailey free form. But I hope I'm correct on this because this is true with me too. You strike me as a harmony centered guitar player. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, totally.
So
There. Yeah, sorry, I'll let you go first.
no, yeah. So that's just going to be my next question is um, how you feel about the potential of the harmony that guitar has to offer that other instruments don't, which obviously you just shared one aspect of it, which is the I believe the French call it this, the acousmatic aspect of it, like with
Yeah.
the volumes, and that adds a whole other dimension to guitar harmony. And just want to get more of your commentary on that.
Uh, there's one element. I mean, there are many, many. I want to try to spot 3 points. One point is when you write music as a composer, for example, uh, one element you cannot write is sound, and sound is very important. For example, in jazz, if you'd hear Steve Lacy, Lester Young, whatever, Ornette Coleman play one note, the sound they had allowed them to start a speech. If you wrote poetry and a certain actor, a big big voice, a big actor, has a very strong voice and takes the time to read this will allow you a total different story. It's something, a story will start. And guitar has this very loaded emotional aspect. And I think most people, if you tell them about guitar and what they would associate with it is voice immediately. It's just like the Bob Dylan thing. You play guitar to sing, or whoever, but Bob Dylan is maybe the best example. And I love Bob Dylan's guitar playing. because it's so functional. It's just to hold the sustain the words, you know. So it's unique, and guitar has this, and the harmony, the sense of harmony is that you ask for. For me, the fact that you have this very emotional dimension in an instrument. I mean, it's just a string. I used to call it tight strings. You know, it's a tight string on a piece of wood, but it's not even proper wood. It's just like uh, it's like a visceral. It's something really physical, and that fact allows you to think of harmony, to open fields. You know, put one tone onto another, because each note is going to be so heavily loaded. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah. So the fact that, yeah, so I think, yeah, what I'm getting at it is that um, harmony, unlike the piano where harmony is just kind of chords, the fact that guitar has this bridge to very different dynamics, very different volume, very different technology, very different methods of manufacturing it, it can almost turn harmony into its own branch, like three branches into volume.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's
that's
resonance. It's a resonance. It's like a organic thing.
mhm.
If you play guitar, for example, if you play electric guitar, but acoustic guitar also, but electric guitar, there is something organic. It's a vibration. You feel this resonance in your body.
Yeah.
And this allows you to put one tone, which is like one story, and then there's another story. Then can happen a third story, a character can come, etc. There is this like strong, physical dimension. So, which for me is emotional.
Yeah, and I came to that same conclusion as well, being a harmony-centered guitarist myself, because I mostly learned to appreciate that when I studied jazz, actually, especially a guy called Ted Green. Um,
Yeah, I love Ted Green.
yeah, in my mind, he's the best guitarist that ever lived. I mean, I don't think, yeah, he's just, I can't even put into words how he completely penetrated and dissected what the guitar is capable of. I can hardly even put into words. And Alan Holdsworth was another big one. Um, the fact that when you first start playing guitar, you learn the cowboy chords, and then you have these people that completely throw that out the window, and rather than showing you what chords guitars can do, they show you what they have the potential of doing and what they are capable of doing. And when I was a teenager listening and studying this stuff, it had that sort of it had the effect that you were talking about. It had this visceral psychedelic effect. You
Hmm.
lift your head to the ceiling, and that's what kind of concluded me as well as a harmony centered guitar player. Um, would you say that that is, especially when I was listening to your sort of experimental um, homages uh, with especially Lamonte Young for one. Is that part of your goal on the guitar is to start realizing unexplored sides of guitar harmony? Is that part of your kind of purpose on the
I'm
guitar?
going to make a. It is. I want to tell you one thing. I'm going to make a link between if you are writing poetry or around poetry. So for me, a note is a word. A note is the same thing as a word you use in a poem. And my approach, I don't believe in styles. I'm not interested in styles, for example, because of styles they don't mean much. If you take music through long periods, the function is the main thing. And so I don't. If you take history of music, let's say we are aware of people playing since 3,000 years. 3,000 years in terms of history is a very small time. So I don't believe 3,000 years ago, people, when they wanted to play, they played differently. I don't believe things were so different than they are today. Small things were different, but that thing is like a. And so for me, I hear any players, any styles, I hear his intention as a word. You know, if it's James Burton playing a guitar, uh, it's an intention. It's a unique sound. If it's whoever you said, Alan Holdsworth, it's his own sound. If it's Derek Bailey, it's his own sound. And I believe this never ceased through history. You had like somebody like Charles Mingus is a figure of bass, the bass leader, the big guy. For sure, you had a Charles Mingus or equivalent 500 years ago, and then before and when so that's why I started to read all kind of music, because I think the first thing you should do is if you as a player you should see each sound as words. Then if you read this music as words, just let's start to read. At some point I used to read a lot of books, and at some point I stopped. I started to read only music. The last 15 years I read mostly music. And through internet, you had this incredible opportunity, like Petrucci Library and all this, all the money invested in public libraries. You can access to facsimiles to the original. And so I started to read only music, and then I started. That's what I did with the Bandcamp thing. I started to record it every day, just to see what it says, what it tells me. It's like you would go through, you would find an old box of old poetry, and you every day you read it to see what it tells you today, how it rings, how it resonates.
Mhm. And that leads very you talking about studying the intention of musical artists throughout history, and treating their music as an introspective thing kind of leads perfectly in what I want to talk about now, um, which is your your behemoth project on Gesualdo for five guitars.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I would love to know your process of that. What did you study a lot of Gesualdo, and has Gesualdo's sense of harmony, did that change over time? And that whole thing is just, I would love to know more
I
about.
I tell you one thing. So I in France we have an incredible institution radio which is called France Culture, and France Culture produced incredible programs. And when I was a teenager, I was I think like 15 or 16. I heard a special 3 hours programs. It was called Le Bon Plaisir on France Culture on Pier Paolo Pasolini, and they used Gesualdo uh, as music in between, and they used these unique recordings of the Quintetto Italiano. Quintetto Italiano. I mean, as you know, but I'm maybe going to tell you for people. Gesualdo was considered a retarded, a crazy guy for 400 years until Stravinsky reopened this and said, "Wait a second, this guy actually invented everything." Gesualdo had a special status. Gesualdo was a prince. He could not be a composer. He was running after Monteverdi. He took lessons, but he could not be a composer publicly. So all the music he left was self-published. And I believe the fact that because Monteverdi, he was commissioned all the time. He had to write music. Actually, in these days of art, there wasn't something like the artist. You had a crew of people who were crafting things like sculpture, painting, whatever. If you ask Michelangelo for the Vaticano, the big painting, it's not he painted all of this. It's he painted the main lines, and then people did it with him. And Monteverdi was like this. It was a whole team of people. Monteverdi would write the main lines, and people would arrange. And uh, and this made somehow their music maybe it's beautiful music, but too functional. And Gesualdo, he had this chance that he had no function, so he could go totally crazy with his dissonance. And this made this so intimate music. He made music that is for cosmic, it's like to send in space.
Mhm.
And I heard this music so when I was a kid, and it always haunted me. I thought this is something for a long time. I thought this is something with guitar you cannot do, but somehow it's so close for me. I felt it so close to this music, but I thought, how can you do this? How can you approach this? And yeah, 30 years, 35 years later, in my life happened a moment where also technology was I just bought a Mac, Apple Mac, and you had this garage band thing, and you could put one voice on the top. You could overdub so easily. So I just started. and I found all these music books and of Gesualdo, and and just doing this was like a healing force for me. There
Yeah.
is something essential, like there is something mineral in Gesualdo.
And how long does the project go on overall? Like how many days how long did it take to record all your material?
3 4 months.
Okay.
Also, if you listen to, there are a few recordings. I recorded Gesualdo a few times. The original recording, you can hear bird singings, because it was a moment of my life where there was some kind of natural harmony, that early music was something that you played early. So I'm an early bird. I woke up at 4 or 5 in the morning to work. And for the Gesualdo, I was doing like this. I was recording at 4, and I was waking up at 3 or 4, and starting recording at 4:35. And at 3, this was made in Paris. And at this time, if you let the window open, you will hear the birds. And the birds, there's a whole crazy story. Birds in cities, they are funny because when everybody's sleeping, that's where they go out and they start. And there's a first type of birds that sings at 4:30 if it's spring. This was recorded during spring. And after 15 minutes, some different birds, they will echo this. And so I wanted this whole uh, and then 2 hours later you will hear the first bus and the kids going to school, etc. And I wanted to record Gesualdo now, like as I was in the city with the noise of the city, to make it this music present, because I believe that the whole historical point, whatever, if you take a work from 3,000 years ago or from yesterday, uh, everything is contemporary when you play it. There's no difference between Gesualdo and, say, Joya Ramon at CBGB's in 70, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, for me, all this is the same idea of present.
Yeah, even I've listened to a lot of his madrigals in particular, and there you are. And how many years ago were the madrigals? Was it 400, 300?
Yeah, they're 400.
Yeah, and I you used the right word, haunting. I've listened to a lot of the madrigals myself, and um, I mean, I know you have that sort of you've talked a lot about imp the right word, intemporal elements of music, of removing the sense of time. But with but that's again what adds to the historical importance of your transcriptions of the madrigals, which is even 400 years later, I still have not encountered anything quite as haunting and quite as cosmic, the exact same synonyms you've described. So these were madrigals, were they like closer to direct transcriptions, like exactly like trying to emulate how Gesualdo would have done it, or is it more of like an intuitive channeling of some sort?
So there are two things. One thing I found that, and this was like like I found the key to it. Even if it's over maybe a bit overdone, but whatever. I found out. So Gesualdo found his wife with lover and killed both of them. And the family of that woman was running after him, so he had to run away. He had to escape. And what he did is, and Gesualdo was playing lute, so he left with nothing else but the lute, and that's where Madrigal started. And there is something very that I did to record is like almost all the madrigal music is written in the same range as the guitar range, exact range. It's like nothing is going lower than E and nothing is going above a high E. It's very strange. It's like it's made for it.
Uh-huh.
And this was the one part, and the other parts are I got the original scores. This it's funny. Gesualdo is a particular character. Gesualdo was very. I mean, all the geniuses are very conservative people. I'm sorry, uh, but a lot of people think they are like total avant-garde and modern. But in the way they did it, they thought of backwards. Gesualdo was 100 years backwards. Like you know Bosch, the painter, the
Yes.
crazy, yeah. So everybody thinks Bosch is like total modern. Bosch is extremely rigorist. Bosch is the exactly opposite. What he shows you with his crazy character is what happens if you do not believe that there is evil.
Mhm.
And Gesualdo was also, he used the ancient form. The type of madrigal he used since 100 years not used anymore. He's like going back to something. He doesn't have the least intention to make avant-garde. He wants to make better before.
Okay. I get it. Yeah, subtle difference. Uh, um, yeah, and I use what was I going to say about Gesualdo? What was I going to say? Um, so do you play a lot of lute yourself with because I hear you talk about a lot of adoration of, you know,
No,
you don't play lute?
uh, I so no, because I don't like exotic. I don't like tourism. I think to play properly an instrument, you need 20, 30 years to get out of technical problems. Uh, but when I started to play this music, I bought a study lute just to get an idea how it works. You know that all the lute music, original Renaissance, like 15th century, 14th century, 16th, 15th, 16th century, all the lute music is written in tablature, not in solfege, not in standard notes. All this music was original. This is something later on. I got the chance to work with great lute players, and all of them they do this is they only use the facsimile. They use the original tablature, and which is very interesting because it leaves a lot of space. It's like it's exactly the same as you get I don't know, like Skip James, John Fay tablature, all this like Stefan Grossman books, you know, all that story. It's exactly the same. There were two tablature in Europe. One's called Italian, one French. So one is like instead of having numbers like 0, 1, 2, you have letters. It's A, B, C, D, and it's the same. And the other one is upside down, and it's using numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, but it's the high, etc.
It's everything
Uh,
except modern tablature.
yeah. So in a way, you get a direct access to this to all this music. So yeah, I had the lute. I bought a lute and I tried to understand how it works, and I understood it's like a smaller guitar. Often I mention this. I don't know if you know. It's one of the greatest lute players from 15th century. It's called. He's called. His name is Luis de Milan. Luis Milan. He made Fantasias. Fantasias for me is like the invention of guitar. And I don't use styles, but I use, for example, for this music, Luis Milan left us in tablature. It's the first intelligence of strings of guitar. Because I don't know if you know lute, but lute is very close. Lute is a bit higher than guitar, and the G is going F sharp.
Because
This,
that was the Baroque standard, right?
yeah,
Their A was a lot.
yeah, actually, that's why if you read classical guitar, I mean, if you buy this like anthology of classical guitars, all this early music, they often propose you to tune down the G and F sharp, eventually the E and D, but this extra. So these instruments are very similar, and I bought one. I used it for 1 year, and after I was not going to spend 30 years on playing lute. So because I'm so not finished, I'm a permanent student. You know, uh, I'm permanently discovering that I have so much to learn, and the more you learn, the more can you can value how much you will never be able to learn.
I like the word you said. It was really funny. Tourism for somebody who passively learns an instrument. It's hysterical. I've never heard that. But I've definitely met guitar players who have that same viewpoint of this uber respect towards instruments. Like I don't want to learn this unless I'm gonna master it. I don't want to passively learn an
Yeah.
instrument. No music for its own sake, nothing. Yeah, the only thing I've just remembered what I was gonna say about the madrigals. Yeah, the only thing that comes to mind, I don't know if they coexist at the same time, but when I think of the madrigals, I can't help but think of Dante, the
Hmm.
Renaissance poet.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I can't help but equate those two. All right, so now we're on to French experimental methods on the guitar. Um, so with the French techniques, outside of guitar that I'm familiar with, like the cut up, collage,
Hmm.
indeterminacy, which is also it's also very popular here thanks to John Cage. You do you believe the guitar can achieve effects that are comparable to those?
Of course. Uh, I mean, what I said before is like for me, guitar is the perfect blank instrument, and at the same time, the perfect popular instrument. So, uh, from this point of view, you can really achieve anything. And also, it has this, for example, there is a funny, interesting story that Martin guitars,
Yes.
American Martin and Co. Uh, if you look, the founder of Martin, when he started, he looked for a luthier from Europe, from Germany. He found who was doing romantic guitar. You can see on internet what romantic guitar is the last of the classical story guitars. Uh, in fact, when they came to America, they became blues parlor. It has this very thin body, and uh, and probably there was not enough in the states people who were playing a romantic guitar, so blues people just took it and made it sound totally different. That's what I mean by the guitar as it doesn't have any orthodoxy. Every time they tried something, and so that's why guitar can do everything. There is a Leo Fender, it's for me, it's not a luthier, it's not a guitar maker. It's the 50s, the American 50s. It's like having TV set, having radio, having a car. It's part of the American 50s. It's a tool, it's an object, and because it's an object, that's why rock and roll started. Because it's an object, you don't have to take so much care. You don't have to have this very respectful thing that you are playing a Beethoven piece or something, which doesn't make sense if you're in the center of the states. It's not your story. You have a different story. When I mean I respect instrument, I mean, for example, I think music, the way we play, is very strongly related to your mother language. If I listen to country music like great, I don't know, James Burton, the intonation of James Burton, I cannot be French and have this intonation. I love it, but it's not my story. I will never sound. It will be like tourism for me.
And would you say like, being American myself, I'm correct in guessing that, the more extreme case would be like me trying to, and I did try to, and I couldn't, I never really, unfortunately, quite fully comprehended it, was me trying to appreciate Eastern Hindustani, um, Hindustani, and what I forgot the other one, but
Yeah.
Carnatic. Um, trying to understand Eastern Indian music, trying to appreciate, like when I was learning sitar for a bit, I did have a professional from India who was actually living close to me at the time, who told me that tuning it is part of playing it, and that took a very long time to digest, and I never could quite sympathize with that as a guitar player, where it's so, um, you know, not to be pejorative, but simpleton, it's just winding up strings where it's not an actual manual labor, almost like carpentry almost when you're playing a sitar. So, so you, so it's almost sounding like you don't like to make an effort too much to, go completely out of the bounds of what you can
I
like viscerally understand, what you can viscerally appreciate in music.
I think it's fantastic to discover. It's fantastic to learn, to explore, to whatever. But at some point, you're going to be realistic. For example, If you really want to play bossa nova, you better be from Brazil.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Or if you want to learn, if you really want to be a master of flamenco, you gotta spend your whole childhood in Spain. And
Yeah, exactly this. I believe in this. But now things are totally, if you are clear, things are totally open, you have great example of people who came into some culture, but they didn't try to make this, to mime it. They just made it the way they were. If Tony Bennett is singing a bossa nova, it's not bossa nova, but it's great. But because it's Tony Bennett, so it's clear.
yeah. So let me see. Did I already ask this question? Post-war movements. Let's see. Okay. These movements redefined. I probably already asked this, but uh let's see. Let's see. Object base. Did a lot of the let's see. When I talk about the French avant-garde, the movements within it, and that this could also be I wouldn't be surprised if you also find that mysterious why I do identify with a lot of the avant-garde art scene so much. Like when I talk about lettrism, I hope I'm saying that correctly,
Mm-hmm.
or
Le
sound,
triste. Yeah.
lettriste and sound
Yeah.
poetry. Um, yeah, and you believed they could create a space for guitar as well, like the whole thing, the whole.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. You could use there. I think that when you mention this, I can think of things that they are. To my knowledge, they haven't been used. But for example, Oulipo. You know what is Oulipo?
I do not. Let's.
Okay, it was a very strong movement of literature from Georges Perec. Raymond Queneau, Georges Perec. They were very experimental. They made some very famous books, but they were also experimenting with language a lot. So, for example, Georges Perec, he made a famous book where he didn't use, it's a huge book, it's like 400, 500 pages, where he deliberately didn't use the letter E,
Yeah.
these kind of things. And for example, this could totally apply to music. I could decide to make a Ulipo. It's the name of this group. It means it's ouvroir. It's an interesting name. I'll send you a link to see what it means. It's like opening a field of literature, whatever, experiment literature. And you could use this ID, and for example, yeah, you can freely improvise. I could decide to make say, I don't know, 10 hours of recorded music without D, and then yeah, this kind of things.
Yeah.
Maybe some people did, but this totally makes sense.
Mhm. I do have a yeah, I do have a pretty accomplished poet in Canada named Christian Book who just won an award for a technique he pioneered called univocalics, which is that
Mm-hmm.
he basically writes entire pages where every single word, if it has a vowel, it has to be the same letter vowel throughout the entire page.
Yeah, yeah.
And one thing that's I find a little mysterious about your approach to the guitar is you do have this duality, and they're both very pronounced. You have a very pronounced visceral approach to your instrument where you really, like you said, you try to view notes as a word or as a letter or a sentence or a statement. But you also have, with the obvious evidence to this being your homage to Gesualdo and your several homages to John Cage. You have this huge historical element. Do those two ever, do those two ever, what's the word? Um, do those two ever clash? Do you ever find yourself having to try and filter those two, having those kind of being not necessarily the same thing?
Now they feed each other. It's fantastic. Uh, I give you a picture of it, and this is something. So I started guitar when I was 8, and I started gigs when I was 13, 14, and I accompanied a lot of people, singers, whatever, etc. And since these early days, I discovered that when you accompany somebody, it's great because you are not the main act. So nobody cares about what you do, but you have a function. Your function is to sustain, to make the singer sound good, you know.
Bob
And
Dylan.
yeah, exactly this. And this means that, for example, sometimes yeah, happened to me. You play in like big theaters and it's packed, and nobody cares what you play. They all care if you make the singer sound good. And in a way, this gives you an incredible freedom actually, because you have to find this perfect line. And once you find this perfect line, everybody gives you peace. You can play the way you want. And this is really, if you play, for example, if I decide to play Gesualdo or record whatever scores, I can totally lean on this, like it's so strong that I don't have to take care, and this somehow will let what my difference, my way to play it, it will let it come out because I don't have the pressure to decide what I do, to be responsible for every if you make a Pat Metheny solo, it's not each night. Pat is, I love Pat, is an amazing guy by all means. He's amazing player, but he's also an amazing human, and he's amazing fan. He's the biggest fan I know. And but when he plays, for example, it's not just the notes he plays, it's behind him is the whole business, the whole band, the whole, and sometimes you don't have to have this, you don't want to have this weight. Like the two guitars player, I played with trumpet player Steven Bernstein, who's like recorded with everyone, and the two electric players behind Bob Dylan, they're friends of him, and I think it's the best gig in the world. You don't have to, you just have to make Bob Dylan sound good. Bob Dylan sound good anyway, so
Would you describe it like is it similar to a flow state, as they call it?
yeah,
Doesn't it,
yeah,
it doesn't feel like something dutiful or something like work, but
no, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
I,
it's just still what I find kind of mysterious is, so to an extent, sometimes I do agree with this sentiment. Mark Twain said it best, um, don't let school get in the way of your education. When
mhm.
you have a lot of that historical element to it, and a lot of the canonized element to it, I can imagine that sometimes that could get in the way of you trying to play authentically and trying to play viscerally.
No, no. For me, one thing again, it has to do the fact that guitar doesn't have orthodoxy. It means that there's nothing is pure. I don't find this better than that. I find better what is better.
Mhm.
There's a greater. I don't know if he's known. Have you heard of Philippe Muret?
Philip Murray
Yeah.
might have,
He
yeah.
was an incredible, he's dead now. He was an incredible art critic in the 80s. It's actually, if you know this French writer is famous now, Michel Houellebecq, he was very influenced by him. And and Philippe Muret was the first guy to criticize all the bad sides of contemporary art, That, for example, if you take a bass clarinet, well, nothing sounds like a bass clarinet as a bass clarinet. And if you have a player playing with this instrument, it's unique, it's great, but it became a cliche, like contemporary dance became a cliche as well. And it's good to be critic. But he says, there's a quote of him that I really like. He says, I didn't say it was better before, I said it was better always. And that's what I mean, you know?
Yeah, the absolutism of it, yeah.
Point.
Yeah, no, the only two French critics I'm very familiar with is someone I've talked with some friends of mine a lot about, Cocteau, Jean Cocteau. Uh,
Yeah.
what was his name? Was he French or American? He was a boxer and he mysteriously disappeared. He went into an island and was never seen again. Um, he I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Mallarme didn't like him at
Ah,
all.
Mallarmé. Yeah, it was French. Yeah. Uh,
Again,
yeah, I know. Yeah, I know who you mean.
uh,
Yeah.
boxer critic disappear. Let's see. It is um Gosh, I don't know. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, but I know, I can see that. Yeah, yeah.
I read that whole story when because I do know that story when he hosted his own satire magazine where he purposely criticized art as horribly as he could and as inaccurately as he could. And he looked at a painting that was Mallarmé's girlfriend at the time, and he said it in French, but he said that a painting of hers needed a good shag, and Mallarmé challenged to fight him and stuff. So yeah, that's all I know about French criticism. So now on to that's so off topic, but it's French.
No, no.
Um,
Yeah.
and so now on to indeterminacy. It's a very fascinating topic. So away from harmony and into indeterminacy. So I don't think this is exclusively a French thing. I think this is just as you say, it's absolute. It's all encompassing. It's indeterminate is in France as it is in America, as it is in Japan, as it is everywhere else. Um, do you see indeterminate music as and guitar or not as music that is making some sort of real existential unambiguous statement, or do you see it as the opposite, as art for art's sake? Where do you see indeterminate music in that regard?
That has to do with politics, I think. In history, everybody improvises constantly. What I what I mean by improvising is like when you wake up and you wake up and you want to have a coffee, for example. This is a clear thought. This is what like a power likes. It's clear. Wake up, coffee. The reality is the way you're going to wake up until you make that coffee and how you make coffee will never be twice the same.
Mhm.
So in this indeterminacy, it's for me it's de facto. It's like you cannot control things totally.
Mhm.
And if you're honest, you're going to accept that a good part of it is not going to be possibly defined. And if you accept it as a positive uh, wave of something possible of reality, then it's much more interesting. It's much more realistic.
Mhm.
Even if the big example is in classical music, we always call classical music everything that has to do with music before, say,
1500.
yeah, no, but even I mean, we actually this term classical music is used wrong. Classical music is something very precise that comes, let's say, with Beethoven and lasts for 100 years until Schoenberg, where music is extremely written and the group, the whatever, the orchestra that plays it, if it's string quartet or orchestra, has to pay attention to all the notes of dynamics, of tempo, of everything is written. Until this time, which is for me, Beethoven is really like the clear line. Until this, it's music which is played by musicians, and there's no all this you don't have to separate the composer from the improviser from the player. They're all the same. Like Bach, uh, Johann Sebastian Bach is everything. He's composer, but he's also player, but he's also improviser, etc., etc. So it's a political decision, and up to the point where you have the conductor, like the conductor is better paid than the violin. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
There's a politics, like conductor is something serious, like improviser is not serious. All this is like shit. Because if you take the period before Beethoven, Joseph Haydn, the string quartet, okay, it's like a Vienna waltz and blah blah. It's music for the king to sing and drink champagne, but this music has a lot of space for improvising, and they always did improvise.
Mhm.
So indeterminacy, yeah, for me, music is indeterminate,
Yeah.
and
Life.
even you. even if you want to interpret like Mozart, this one piece, this clarinet quintet, for example of Mozart, people should go to a concert hall 5 times in a row. They will never see the same show. So this is the reality.
And what's really hilarious, what's really funny um, about indeterminacy is, talking about how music, music used to be, you say music, canonically speaking, music used to be something very precise and something very absolute, um, something very externally dependent. But since around the exact same time as indeterminacy started, some people there was that group of people that have made it worse. There was Ben Johnston, Xenakis. I mean, and even Frank Zappa, I would probably put in that category. Steve Reich, probably. Um, it's it's such a paradox how around the exact same time people are trying to let go of how precise music can be. There are people taking it. I don't know at that point. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but way at the opposite direction. Especially Ben Johnston.
I recorded improvised pieces with Luc Ferrari, for example, and he had interesting setups to try to get you out of what you would do normally. And one thing was like we were in a studio recording studio room, and he asked. So there were 4 speakers in each corner, and we had the microphones. And these microphones, they were called he called them hand mics, and the whole PA was set on the border feedback. So you had to be really careful, otherwise you will feedback. This kind of things, and this has to do with this kind of thinking, to me.
Yeah, and of course with feedback, I think something, pretty much the entire West, all of Western guitar players can agree upon is that nobody kind of pioneered feedback to my mind more than Hendrix.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when I listen to, have you listened to his uh Live at Fillmore East?
Yeah,
Yeah, like that's the
yeah,
perfect use of feedback I've seen before or since, and it's and you're right, that is feedback is probably I would say thanks to now these connections that we're making, I would say feedback probably might be the most indeterminate part of guitar
yeah,
because I think it's very safe to say it's absolutely impossible for me to do feedback note for note the exact same way Hendrix did a Fillmore East song. Like if I did Machine Gun feedbacking the exact same notes, I don't think doing that for 1,000 years can get me the same result. So
no,
yeah, it's something, and it's one of the few things that I've haven't really seen anyone emulate. And the same thing with um the one that came before Hendrix, Robert Johnston. Um,
yeah,
and Robert Johnston, I feel is kind of similar to Ben Johnston. They're
yeah,
totally unrelated people, but same last name. But where they both incorporated microtonal techniques. And that's another interesting paradox of guitar music is the same people that kind of try to let go of theory are the same people that push it forward. It's very Taoist. I don't know why that is, but if you look at it, Robert Johnston was not a classically trained guitar player. Was entirely self-taught, and yet hardly anybody to this day can do his songs the exact same way he did it. It's yeah, I don't know why that is, why the same people that let go of theory on the guitar are the most advanced. I don't know if you have any more wisdom on that. I don't know if that's
Uh, I'm going to reply a different way. There is something very interesting. So all the guitar history is a history of hybrid. You know what I mean? Is like made up things. Classical guitar does not exist. It's an hybrid. It's only transcription because the real instrument was lute. The only serious composer, like Bach, Vivaldi, wrote for lute. Nobody wrote for guitar, but guitar players basically. Very seldom. It's anecdotic. And the great 19th century inventors of what we call classical guitar, which is in itself physically an hybrid, a made up thing out of different histories, also standardized in a way. they had this paradox that they wrote incredible studies. If you take like all the Carcassi, Giuliani, all these people, they wrote incredible studies. But when they wrote music, to my taste, it's totally like tapestries. It's like ridiculous. Like let's go to Spain and flamenca, fake, and etc. It's like a cheesy. Uh, it's surf music.
Now that I, now that you talk about, now that I'm thinking about this, now that you talk about classical guitar being a very artificial thing, um, if I remember correctly, the earliest, you know, prodigy or protege of classical guitar was I don't remember his name. The guy who did Recuerdos de la Alhambra. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, and I think so. If I remember correct, so if I'm making all these connections right, even when classical guitar started, we already had audio recording technology. If I remember,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and which that's absolutely not classical by definition, because I would define classical as music that is pre 1500, pre modern, something that had to be written down, not
It is the big. That's the big question because lute is also another instrument which is major in Arab world, which is called oud. It's the same instrument.
Mhm.
And but classical music, Arab classical music, like Indian classical music, you don't write it. It's a spiritual thing. You learn it.
It's channeling.
Yeah. So it was. I think there is a big line, and it's when Spain was this Arabo Andalusia, when you had also with religion, and it's like a 15th, 16th century philosopher like Avicenne and all these people. When you had all the mystic that talk together, like Muslim, Jews, Christian, they were all talking together. And music, a lot of this flute music is actually Jewish, but they didn't claim it as being Jewish. And like later in North Africa, like Algeria, Arab world, uh, you had the same music was Jewish or Muslim, with exactly same music. If you listen to Rai or early from Egypt to Morocco, you will find a music which is very similar, and some of it is Jewish, some of it is Muslim. Uh, and this division line, what you write, what you don't write. African music, you don't write.
Mhm.
And then you had also this colonial things that you will find later in different places. But for example, in African music, you call soukous, it's called rumba. There's no point that in West Africa there is rumba. It's like South. But it was because the big hotel were the colonial hotels where the gigs were. And yet you find the exact same with Jamaica, with reggae. It's exactly the same story.
Mhm.
All the pioneers of reggae, before reggae was the liberation that's going back to being a Jamaican, but before it was like version for tourists and hotels.
I
And I think music you cannot dissociate from function. There's a great sorry, and after I stop
just
talking all the time, but there's a fantastic quote of Morton Feldman that music is a public art, and that's the problem.
yeah, I love Morton Feldman. Yeah. Do you have a copy of his book? Regards to
Yeah,
Yeah, I have it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard to understand, admittedly, but yeah. So I feel like this was not part of the original list of questions, but I feel like I can't resist asking you this. No, because knowing that you are so passionate about um indeterminate, non-rule based, non-canonical based music and historical music with Gesualdo and Lamonte Young. Do you think does good and bad music exist for you, or are they all one, or is it more complicated than that? Or
Yeah, good and bad, but it's to the interpretation. I apply this to interpretation. I mean, I would put it, I would change good and bad, and I would propose you different terms. It's like original and not original.
Mhm. But sometimes there's cases, of course, where copied music can be masterpieces, like Gould's Bach contrapuntal piano. um, with Glenn Gould. So
But that's not copied, that's interpreted, that's incarnated, for example. That's what I mean is like is if you speak your own voice, you know what I mean?
mhm. Yeah, and
Because for example the Shags are terrible musicians, but
yes, the Shack.
nobody ever did that, and nobody will ever reproduce this, you know. Or like I don't know, somebody that I love like Arthur Lindsay, is nobody's ever played like Arthur Lindsay, nobody will ever even tried to.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
and
it's unique, it's a sound that I immediately I can, it's like a reference for me, like Freddie Green with Count Basie is a reference. And it's a guy who spent all his life playing the soul of the band, and you don't really hear him. But if he was not there, you it makes. So you have a lot of examples like this. I think this is what I mean is like your own or not your own. If it's not your own, then that's a different. You know, for example, with pedagogy in the last 20, 30 years, you have music schools, a lot of music schools that trains a lot of people. And the global level has raised, for example, in jazz guitar, because I come from there, like so many people that play fantastic, but they have nothing. I don't see. That's my main question in music is like, why do you play? You know,
yeah,
that's the resume of everything.
yeah. He who has a Y can bear almost anyhow. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, and I actually now that yes, because now that you told me about, you know, Glenn Gould being a reinterpretation rather than a copy, I realize that's correct because the piano as we know it was not even around during Bach's day. It was all harpsichord and much more heavily string based. Uh,
Glenn Gould is fantastic example because everybody thinks Bach is Glenn Gould. Glenn Gould is has nothing to do with anything that Bach. Glenn Gould is an American. Glenn Gould is Oscar Peterson. It's an American piano player, I mean, North American pianist. Uh, it can't be more opposite to Bach,
yeah, and
and he made it so strong that everybody thinks that's it, and that's fantastic.
they think
That's
yeah, and
yeah,
I guess I was part of that too. The people that got tricked. You know, when you listen to, especially a prominent example would be Bach's partitas on the piano. They think that's how they think that's how the original performers did
yeah, yeah.
it.
And you know, if by chance we had recordings of Bach, people would hate it. Like, you know, classical music world would for sure hate it. I used to live in Vienna, and in the opera house there is a small record store with only archives. There's a one side in Vienna is interesting is records. There are some very special record stores, antique record stores. People come from around the world to get shellacs of classical interpretation, sometimes jazz. And in this record store in the opera, they published all kind of yeah, interesting, like valuable old shellacs put into CDs. And the recordings you people would like go crazy if they'd hear this today. It was like circus, it was pop, it was everything, you know. It's just a
Well,
matter of habit.
yeah, well, for one, almost Glenn Gould's piano was certainly tuned at A 440, and I don't think a single Baroque instrument would have was like that back then. It was all
No, no.
half step.
Here I am. Sorry.
No, no problem. I'll just edit that out. Don't worry. Um, okay, so we have just a few more topics left. Okay, so luckily that was pretty organic. Okay, so we were on, if I remember correctly, we were archive you visited in Vienna.
Yeah. That they had all this version. I mean, I'm going to take you an example. With English music, for example, it is English music is the same since 500 years. You know, if you take John Dolan, uh, Sting or Peter Gabriel is exactly the same. It's almost like literally the same music. And so all these ideas of how you present music, I think in literature, for example, nobody asks himself the question when you read a text, whether it's from very old, long time ago, you read it at present, and I think music is at present. The problem is all the fantasy people have around, and this is you cannot separate this from music. Music has a social value. The reason why you listen music because you like it, but you listen music because it gives you a picture. You know, if you go into certain kind of metal music, it's not just of course you like that music, but it also means something. Like if you go to punk, if you go to techno, it has a meaning. For example, all the gay scene of the 70s was in San Francisco with electronic music, or Detroit. All this has a meaning, and for most people this is the main thing. That most people, they don't listen to music. It's music is a flag.
Mhm. It's they listen to the sociology around the music.
Yeah.
Mhm. And so now on to pretty excited to discuss this a little bit. So I've talked about people who have shaped guitar. For me, in my case, I can't think of anyone exposing what the guitar is capable of more than Ted Green. I can hardly think of someone who has been harder to replace on the guitar other than Hendrix. But I feel somebody that I think the avant-garde world, especially in France with the philosophy around Dada and Surrealism, I don't feel that there's any guitar player more indebted to than Derek Bailey. And
Yeah.
Derek Bailey, uh, I would love to discuss about him because he's kind of an enigma to me. I don't know anyone else my age that knows who he is other than people I've already told him about. So but have you seen him in person or seen videos of him perform? Because it's very interesting because
I,
he's
I used to see him.
yeah, and it's
I spent a lot of time with Derek, and Derek was a major turn for me.
it's absolutely, to me it's almost comical, and I mean that in a good way, watching him perform because he's such a sharp, smart, dressed looking man, and he's playing a $5,000 ES 175 arch top, but he's playing the most, indeterminate, the most careless, like childlike music at all. And to me, it completely contradicts his visual aspect of him playing. Um, so, um, so what do you see? What do you from your and now that you've told me you spent a lot of time with him, what do you think the world should remember about Derek and his guitar playing?
I think that the world is going to learn a lot about Derek in the coming centuries. Uh, I think, for example, no composers, for me until now, there is no really serious composing, contemporary music composing. I think in the future, I give you not more than 50 years before in classical music area, people will play transcription of Derek Bailey solos. But Derek has a very strong history. Where he comes from was very rooted. Derek was really a jazz guitar player, but he was a jazz guitar player. For example, he said bebop guitar was something wrong. Why? Because guitar is an instrument in E, and bebop is in E flat or B flat. And all the guitar players that try to follow saxophone players, they lost the guitar. Why? Because Derek was rooted in this If you know this jazz history in guitar, you have people like George Van Epps, Eddie Lang, all this. Well, Ted Green is related to George Van Epps, for example. But there's a whole George bands, like all the incredible duets, like Dick McDonough with George Band, Carl Kress, etc. They're these virtuoso guitar players who play totally guitar music, and this, the way they played, was the continuation of this 19th century classical guitar kind of great studies. So Derek was totally rooted in this. And when I first met him, I was 16. I was looking for a different kind of playing. I had heard people I like James Blood Elmer, but I'm not black. I'm not American, etc. I wouldn't play like that. It made no sense. But I love him. And with Derek, I met someone because I'm rooted in this history of guitar. I met someone I totally knew his technique. His technique was very old school. And Derek said a lot of very clear things that not everybody understood or wanted to pay attention. Like, for example, if you ask him, I remember somebody asked him once, what is freely improvised music? He said, it's more playing per cubic meter. It's this kind of things. And Derek was I make a parallel between Derek and Glenn Gould, for example. For me, these people are similar. They're just so advanced instrumentalists. In the free jazz area, in the experimental area, you sometimes have people that are funny, but they are not like the greatest instrumentalists. And this is the problem. Why, if you want to go further with music at some point, it doesn't matter how you call it, it's music, whether it's electronic music, whether it's this doesn't matter. At the end, it's music. And Derek was an extremely advanced instrument player. The same as Cecil Taylor is an incredible instrument. That's why they had the strength to bring their ideas. If you want to play, Derek played like a chess game, and it's exactly like a chess game with indeterminacy. Like Derek was looking for the problem, At the end, for example, I remember he liked to play with people that get stuck, but on a high level. For example, he would love to play a duet with a traditional instrument like shakuhachi or this, how do you say, koto, this kind of Japanese string instrument, traditional instruments, which are totally usually they are designed, built for one tonality. And if somebody wants to improvise with it, very soon it's going to be a physical problem. Is like, how do you get out of that tonality? But if they are great players, and Derek was interested in this, not in somebody makes the number 734th parody of improvised saxophone free solo that he didn't like this.
Yeah, I can also see the connection of him viewing the guitar as a chessboard with how mapped out his harmonics were, trying to
Yeah,
fit harmonics everywhere on the board, on the
yeah,
fretboard. Yeah, and he was another funny aspect of Derek Bailey is I've never seen such a guitar player other than Hendrix maybe like when he went to like this chordal almost reggae style to this extreme distorted fuzz that's you can't even put into a genre. Other than that, I don't think there's another guitar player who has such a clear before and after enlightenment thing where if I remember correctly, he launched his career as a session guitarist, right?
yeah. He worked for BBC he worked for a long time as professional musician.
Hmm.
At first, he came from Sheffield, and in his family, they played for pubs, they played for dances on the weekend. That's how he started quite young. And then he became a professional musician. So he had a whole career. He played with Sally Field, she's a famous comedian, like really like a Elizabethan, like a really like a Queen Mother type of, and she was telling like jokes, and there are between songs and jokes really like here Derek was playing with her. Yeah, there's all. I play with another character of that scene that had this exactly similar as Lol Coxhill, saxophone player. And Lol, in England you had the union, so you couldn't bring a band because you had to pay a lot of you would have to pay for foreign English musicians not to work. So he was the chief of the horn section to accompany all kind of people, main stars. That's where Rolling Stones started, etc. And Derek and Lol, for example, they had the same history. They played with anybody through every job. There was this famous. It's not rumors because it's true partly, but when rock and roll started in England, they were sending to Derek this young band they signed just to so he can show them basic chords and things, how to play the instrument.
Mhm.
But there is another paradox that, that's why people think about this is this is that, but the reality, if you look at it, is not like this. If you think about what they call rock and roll guitar, it does not exist. The first American rock and roll is not rock and roll; it's R&B. It's like Fats Domino, it's like Little Richard. This is rock and roll. This is the origin, or like Bill Doggett now. There's a guitar player I love, Billy Butler. He was playing with Bill Doggett then and King Curtis and all this thing. This is like where the original American rock and roll is like R&B. And then in England, you have all this thing with like Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, but all these people, they're jazz musicians. They're just guitar players originally. Maybe they are not the best jazz guitar players, but all of them, you can see, there's nothing to do with rock and roll. It's something else. Like Eric Clapton is a prog rock guitar player. It's clearly rooted in jazz.
Mhm. And let's see. Yeah, and I do have a favorite song of Derek, just so you know. I forgot what album it's from, but I think it's a adaptation from another artist. He did this performance called Laura. I forgot
Oh
what.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing.
It's the famous song, Laura. Da, 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 da.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
he does it the way Derek Bailey does it, of course. So
yeah. You
and
have to look. There is one recording of Derek which is incredible. I think it's called Feedbacks, or I can give you the link exactly. There's one record he made where he made acoustic feedbacks. It's only about feedbacks, totally acoustically. It's very Derek. It's like the old technique he had with harmonics was he wanted to play clusters, and it's very complicated. And
yes.
this is very George Van Epps. If you take George Van Epps' huge books, like in 4 volumes, there's tons of how you do this and this and this. And it's like mathematics. And Derek, so he found that with harmonics, you can really have a cluster with 3 notes, 4 notes, sometimes 5 notes, etc., etc. And this record is typical Derek kind of studies that he wanted to make it. He used acoustic feedback because if you play this 175, all these guitars, these archtop guitars, they had string attached much longer before the bridge. So it was resonating. And he made a whole record on this. It's incredible. Still
That's
looking permanently.
that's amazing. And then last thing about Derek is um I feel he is one of those guitar players that a lot more people misunderstand him than understand him. Uh yeah, I remember somebody saying, um, you know, unfortunately to be not to be derogatory, but they say that people that followed him, people that admired his work were pretentious, but Derek Bailey himself was not, where he wanted people to understand what he was doing. He didn't want to leave any ambiguous room out, if I'm correct on this. Um,
No, he was 1,000% clear. The
mhm,
problem is the people around that scene, uh, for many reasons, mainly also for education. I mean, they didn't have the cultural, they couldn't read him. They didn't know his background. They didn't understand the point.
mhm.
There's another guy who is a major guy from the English scene is Keith Rowe from AMM.
Yes, Keith Rowe.
And Keith actually lives in France since Maggie Thatcher he left, and I love Keith. And I met him very early, and I met him not knowing anything about improvised music. I met him because when I was a kid, I was around Tal Farlow, the great jazz guitar player. And first show I came in Nantes, and Keith is living near Nantes. Keith came, and it was this very nice English gentleman, and he told me he loves it because, and this was true. Tal Farlow, he made a totally free introduction to standards, but totally free. It's like could go anywhere. And Keithrow, he loved Tal Fowler for many reasons. And then we started to talk about jazz guitar. And every time I met Keithrow, we talk about jazz guitar. He's very close. These pickups, Bill Lawrence pickups, and Keithrow's Bill Lawrence pickup is a bit like the harmonies. It's like this famous pickups. And Keith is like total. And Keithrow, all his technique is experimental, but inside you hear that originally he's a jazz guitar player, and it's his way not to parody maybe you cannot play better than Jim Hall or whatever, so let's do something else. But inside this something else is the whole history is there. And Derek Bailey's dream was to be in Nat King Cole Trio, and he really meant it, and all the time I spent with him, we were listening to old guitar players, like this incredible technician, like Oscar Moore was a big hero, Teddy Bunn, all these people. That's what I do today. People think, oh, that's old jazz. Nah, it's just incredible techniques. And that's what I listen to, for example. I go for these unique players. And if what I meant before that a note is a word, this is this. Listen to each people's language. They're so incredible language.
Did you guys listen to Blind Blake? Because
Yeah.
he's my favorite of the old guitar players.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you listen to his song Georgia Bound, he plays the same chord progression, but he never plays it the same way twice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a song, it's very, very hard to copy. Now on to we have only a few questions left. So on to your more direct influence. So in preparation for this, you showed me a Miles Davis song called Gloria that he did with who else was it? Who did he do it with?
It's actually not Miles Davis. It's the
Kolsch.
this the song was written by Don Byers, a tenor, and the version it's a French singer with Ornette Coleman.
Okay. And I noticed this pattern, just another pattern I've noticed in your music. The most striking part of that song easily for me was the ending where it went into this percussive explosion and then the sax goes off into this crazy arpeggio. And I actually do notice that a lot in your guitar playing. I noticed it especially in your performance of, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Pale in the Wind,
Yeah,
Lamont, where there's a part in the middle of the song where it's just like that. You do this very climactic, and then it goes off into arpeggio. So I wonder if that's just a coincidence, or is that something you've derived from saxophone playing, or
I take each idea as an idea. I isolate an idea as an idea for me. That's what I mean. But it's also generally, I think people should make a step back. You hear something you like or you see something you like, and just step back and try to make it something universal,
yeah, totally.
a universal element.
Hmm. Do you find the guitar? Because I know this is kind of polarizing in the guitar world. Do you find the guitar as a good instrument as something that borrows phrasing and concepts from non-guitar instruments? Because I know some people approach the guitar that way, some people don't. Some people treat the guitar just like a saxophone, and then there's just like me and just like you that treat it largely as a harmonic thing, and like most jazz players.
I,
So
I'm going to make you a quote from Jacques Lacan, the psychotherapist. He
Lacan.
said, "You got to be you got to be a theologist to be a real atheist." Uh, I think you got to go really deep inside the guitar to be able to go out.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. The only way out is through. So
Yeah, you have to be really aware of the instrument. I think a lot, for example, when I see students, a lot of people, they are stuck by the instrument is stopping them. So you have to be able not to be stopped by the instrument. And then you can bring back anything.
And that's
It
what
is a problem. Yeah, it is a problem when you start. I mean, for a long time, I hated guitar. I hated my playing. I hated guitar because I wasn't free. And it takes a long time. I think it took me 25 years ago. Yeah, 25 years altogether to get the head out of technique, to just not think when I play, just play.
so you said Derek had that fascination as well, fascination with people that are stuck on the guitar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But because Derek was playing 8 hours per day all his life. You know, at the end of his life, he moved to Barcelona and he had this. He made a record about this. He had this disease and with hand, carpal tunnel. He had these problems, so he changed his technique with thumb. And I remember I visited him in Barcelona. What he did was just incredible. There's one of his last, I think the last Zadig record, which is called Carpal Tunnel. He's not. He used all his life incredible, like heavy picking, like swing kind of picking, and he couldn't do this anymore. So he reinvented this technique with the thumb. Yeah, that's music is music, etc., etc. But at some point, you need to have a practice, a routine. You have to be a higher. There is a small video of Cecil Taylor when he tells this joke. It's a young musician asks, "How do you get to Carnegie Hall?" And the other guy says, "Practice." That I think that's it. If you're at this level of practicing of being aware of your instrument, then nothing is a problem.
Yeah,
It's challenges
it's it,
only.
it's enlightenment almost.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, now on to the frontiers. Um, have you discovered or even pondered about sides of the guitar that you think are unexplored that are up to the future to find out?
I think it's unlimited. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
There is a. If you look at the things I recorded, there's a old series, old moments, which was like 25 years ago or something. It's called Joseph series. Like Joseph is the main album, but there are many others. It was a moment where um, I I had worked a lot in Europe with like jazz people, and people were playing a lot of notes, but I was missing the meaning of it. They were playing too many notes for me, and I got like a crisis, and I decided to put the guitar on the floor and not put any finger on the fretboard, but play guitar, make the guitar play. So I was making a feedback, looped feedback, everything, making the guitar feed itself, but never putting a finger on the fretboard.
Mhm.
And things like this, there are plenty possibilities. Yeah.
What excites you? So now that we've gone to what excited you in the past, what excites you the most about the guitar in the future?
There's so many things to be heard that I have no idea they exist even. No, I think there are plenty. It has to do with style. Also, uh, we live through times that are, I mean, all the times are related to histories. We live in this time. I think we are slowly going to go out of the internet problem. Everything was, let's say in 2000, everything changed because internet came. For example, you could access everything any moment just by clicking, and this made history. The idea of history is that a lot of things happened, and then some people think and say this was important, this was maybe less important, this was original. That's why I use this original, not original, but this was original. This is in history of painting. You see, for example, one guy invents something or creates something or changes something, and then you have many followers. History usually didn't remember the followers because they might be really good crafters, but they didn't make a difference. Uh, and I think we are going through another chapter. I think politically and everything at the moment, I mean, as you know, it's a total mess, but it's also a very miserable mess. It's like all these like people that speak very loud, they make a lot of fuss. they have nothing to propose at all. You know, they don't bring anything. It's not even I don't know. Maybe it's you have to take this with a lot of brackets, but I am absolutely not pro this. But like Nazis, they had people with ideas, you know, and today, like whatever equivalent you find in the world, they have absolutely not ideas. So it's like on the level of TikTok video of 3 seconds. So I think we reached the bottom of this, and it's gonna come something else.
I like.
And you can see.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I like what J.R.R. Tolkien said. He said if you write a book and you want it to be remembered many years from now, is you have to make sure it says something. Which a lot of people do that. A lot of people write very verbose, lengthy stuff, but it
Yeah,
actually.
that all that is like too much, too much, too much, too much, too much. Wrote nothing, 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 and you can apply it to. I use this Goebbels example, but for example, too many diplomed students of music with no idea of any new music out. You know, for example, I think art should be dangerous again. It should be dangerous again. You should have a political thinking, not in the sense of politics, but in the sense of Derek Bailey was very strong like this. When I met him first time, he said you have to have your own autonomy. And the biggest lesson is Derek, he had 1,000 fans in the world that would buy anything he did. And that's how he survived. That's you know, like concrete. That's a real thing to do. Today it's like everything is mixed cultural products, and I think we reached. There's a cat passing. We reached the point of. I think okay, people tried everything they could, etc. It doesn't bring anything. I think soon this world is going to collapse, and nobody's going to miss the whatever. Also, it's a lot of repetition. You know, I'm not going to enter the political subject, but for example, if you watch things on a daily basis, okay, so you have this like here in this country you have this, in your country you have this orange guy, but this orange guy, if you take a bit of distance, first, it's nothing new in American history. There have been a few times this kind of people, and what he's talking is like if you had the distance of history, it wouldn't make a bottom line because it's bad. That's what I mean. So I think soon will come a new moment where something essential, you know, like CBGB, like let's say, but 77 in New York, there's a moment where everything is essential.
Mhm.
And people do it. That's it. They do it because they have to do it. It's essential.
Yeah.
So the future, the next will. I think this is soon going to come in the next 10 years maximum.
Yeah.
You will need meaning
Mhm.
because otherwise the history of humanity is always the same.
Mhm.
So,
And then and then now with and then we're on the
yeah,
last um so something I've struggled with for a long time, and I wonder if you have any solution on this. Um, how would you describe because I wonder how you go about your daily life because I struggle with this. How would you describe what you do to people who aren't familiar with this highly intellectualized form of art and form of music? Because I often find myself lost for words at times, you know, because I want to say something accessible. I don't want to say something pretentious, but I'm not a creature of compromise. I don't know where that fine lining is. So,
uh, yeah, but that still is this political aspect side. For example, when I first met Derek Bailey, I was like, wow, this is the best thing ever I ever heard or I ever faced, etc. But immediately I knew that most of the people around me, I cannot tell them that it's the best thing because they will not understand. You know, I don't know if you have a aunt or a niece. She doesn't listen to this kind of music at all. You cannot tell her it's the best music ever because it doesn't make sense. So
Yeah.
you have to understand that it's too. It's not antinomic. One is not against the other, but it will make it. It has to make it. Like for example, Jackson Pollock is avant-garde. When he starts this dripping, it's avant-garde, and when he started, I think it was not for most of the people, but it became a kind of common picture since. So I think that's where you can bring things and describe what you do. When I describe what I do to people who have nothing to do with the scene, I try to find what is common. For example, I feel like a baker. You know, somebody is making bread and is interested in anybody else makes bread because everybody makes a different bread. I wake up early usually since I'm a kid. I wake up at 5, 4, 3, 6, and I work, I work, I work, I work. That's it.
On your music, on your projects.
Yeah, I work a lot on research a lot. I need to, it's like a big pot, you know, I need to get through a lot of things, a lot of things. Uh, like, I don't know, I give you an example. Today, I was like, I'm trying to collect as much links to Chuck Rainey, the bass player, sessions, because he's somebody I didn't listen really that much. I know him for a long time. He's a guy who's played with everybody from jazz to soul to, you know, from Aretha Franklin to whatever, etc. But he's an incredible player. He's a guy who's on 10,000 records. And you've heard him, for example, for sure a million times, not knowing it's him. And I'm interested in this crafted aspect. And this is like this, you know, like you go, and you listen to this, and through listening to this, and later I will meet, for example, the last shows I played with. I don't know if you know him. It's a great guy, Greg Cohen, is a bass player. He's played. He comes from LA. He's like early 70s now, but he's played with everybody. He's the bass player on Tom Waits. He's the bass player with John Zorn, with Ornette Coleman. But also he has a whole LA history. He played with Conte Candoli, and he played with Ornette Coleman a lot. And when we meet, we talk a lot. And what he points out are some things that I'm really interested how he sees this. And then when we play, I can hear the difference. For example, that a bass player, he's a real bass player. This guy who's playing low. And when you play with him, for example, if you leave him the low space, suddenly he sustains totally your part, and you can position yourself. This kind of things, you know, it's very concrete things, and it's like an artisan, like baker. How do you make crusty, and you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And so yeah, so what does a normal workday look like for you usually when you're
Wake up at 4. I search until 7. Uh, at the moment, I'm on a break of that. But when I recorded this like Gesualdo kind of things, I recorded at 7:30 until 9:30. I mix. I go to buy vegetables.
yeah.
I nap, etc. I used to tour for a long time. I used to tour a lot, play a lot. Today, I'm happy to play only the shows I really want to do. Uh,
That's a good way to go.
yeah,
A lot of
I'm
people yeah, that's a very common path for a lot of people in the avant-garde scene, especially I don't know why that's such a clear pattern, but a lot of people that do avant-garde music at the end of their careers, they always do sporadic gigs, you know, especially where I am, especially in New York City. So, like Paul McCartney, you know, doing surprise shows in New York City now. Like, and then there was I'm sure you've heard about this on the news, Philip Glass,
hmm?
who was going to
Yeah,
do
cancelled. Yeah,
Kennedy Center because now it's called, you know, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and so and right, and the before I get to the last question, I just have a quick uh
I just before I tell you one thing is I think the only function we have as artists is to show other people that everything is possible. This is our responsibility, but it means also like you have to take position, you have to decide, you have to take risk, you have to show that everything will always be possible.
That's the end goal with all mediums. Mhm. And so yeah, I have this. I just had this quote memorized just a couple minutes ago that I think you might like. I was you know Mark Rothko, the painter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Really- yeah, I really love this story when he did his very first mural. And I think it was a child actually. It was a child asked him how long it took him to paint it, and he said 57 years. So
Yeah, that's my life.
that sounds
That
like that sounds like a lot like your approach to it. So
yeah, I think I mean ideally I would if you ask me I would like to have 300 years to get to medium part to just get the standard.
how many years?
300 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is yeah, I like what yeah, there was another great professor from MIT who said it really funny. He's like the only way we're gonna like start making actual progress in art and coming up with, you know, relativity like theories, coming up with civilization altering discoveries is we either live longer lives so we can have more time to master stuff, or we can have intelligent machines to do it for us. And then he said, and I can't think of a third choice. So
Yeah,
yeah, they could do it.
yeah.
And then so
What
yeah, this is the last question. This has been really educational, really awesome. It's been really amazing talking about indeterminacy, about Derek Bailey. I think this is going to open a lot of, especially I like to target my stuff towards people in the early stages of learning guitar because that's when it's the easiest to quit. That's when it's the most frustrating. So when I love to do stuff like this where we can provide people new ways of looking at it, so it won't be so easy to quit. So what is the most meaningful way to you that we can support your work?
uh do your own continue do your own the more we'd have individual voices the stronger we get all together.
That's a
I
great
have nothing to sell. I have nothing to sell. I have everything to share.
that's an amazing answer. Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, yeah, so I'm just gonna yeah repeat what I said. Yeah, I hope that that was the end goal of really bringing you on is this definitely connected my two biggest loves in the art world together, and I really hope that this is really just for posterity and this is going to help more young people look at the guitar way more differently because that's really frustrating, and that's why I love talking to people from France because it's really frustrating for me as an American, having such a narrow view of what music is, having such rigid definitions. It has to be 145 EAD. We're it's so discouraged to learn about alternative ways of playing guitar and alternative music. So that's why I love having people like you on so that I can help my friends and help my audience, you know, in the States have a much more enlightened view of it. So Noel Akchoté, it has been an honor talking with you for 2 hours about the guitar. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. So thank you so much for
Thank you so much.
thank you so much for
Take
tuning
care.
in. God bless. Yep. Bye bye.
Bye.
All right, and I'm about to end the recording and